Hi, Bother Brigade. Here's what's bothering me today. Happy 420. Hey, it's the weed day, right? Magic number 420. Blaze it is basically a cloud of smoke at 4:20 p.m. exactly. You know the typical routine, right? Now, for us here in good old Canada, it's actually been legal for a while now, which on the surface seems pretty great until you realize most of the responsibility was foisted on provincial governments, most of whom were conservative at the time and still are. So legal weed is still very much kind of a joke and kind of just really went to capitalists. And, that's not always a great thing, right? Not a lot of mom and pops, as it were. And also worth mentioning is the fact that within that frame of reference, right? So weed has been legal in Canada since, 2015 or so. And so in those 7 years, we still have hundreds, if not thousands of people rotting away in jail for marijuana charges. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. Now, again, on the surface of it, it's actually a pretty good thing that we got legalized weed from coast to coast. We are one of the few places on earth where that's actually allowed, right? So that's actually a pretty fun and good thing, even though I haven't smoked in like at least a decade at this point. However, within that system, we have some very real problems that don't need to exist. To really touch on that subject that I just mentioned a few seconds ago, we still have a lot of people incarcerated for very basic drug possession charges. Here's the kicker. In 2019, the Canadian government started a program based upon public pressure of, hey, maybe we should let the people out who are in jail only for marijuana-related offenses. Now that it's legal, that seems kind of like a double standard, right? And they said, okay, yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. So they introduced this program, basically, where you could, if you were in jail for marijuana possession, you could apply to have your record expunged. However, only 484 marijuana pardons have been granted since program started in 2019. Yeah, so this program, which started, again, 4 years after we legalized the goddamn stuff, they then made this program so cumbersome that many who apply, they've had mistakes or it gets sent back to them or they find that they don't qualify for a variety of reasons. This is really related only to a simple marijuana possession charge. And so if you have anything else tied to your charges, such as, say, theft, then, oh, nope, sorry, you can't apply for a pardon this way. And so beyond that, hyper narrow focus on what, constitutes qualifying for this pardon program, you also have the very real issue of it being such a cumbersome process that many prisoners just kind of can't even be bothered to go through with it because it's too much of a burden. How messed up is that? And so here we are, loving to, dangle it over everyone else like, look, we have free weed and you don't, ha, 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 ha. Isn't Canada so great and progressive, right? And yet we still have people languishing in jail for marijuana charges while big name companies with big money capitalist donors got in on the market and they got it on the ground floor and they bought up most of the market. And now you can't go anywhere without seeing some kind of super fancy dispensary now trying to sell you weed that will like literally lay you on your ass for a few hours. And we still have people languishing in prison for simple marijuana possession charges. What the fuck is wrong with us? But it's not just about us, right? There's also the fact that Biden has actually made a promise south of the border to basically kind of do a similar thing in terms of pardoning people for simple marijuana possession. The Biden-Harris government has promised to decriminalize the use of cannabis and automatically expunge all prior cannabis use convictions. But hey, this guy's a famous promise breaker. He's basically delivered on like nothing of note, really. So not exactly too hopeful for that. And so that's what I kind of want to focus on next is beyond the blatant hypocrisy of these systems. And even though we have people on both sides of the border saying, oh yeah, no, it's so sad. We got to expunge these records and then nothing really happens. Let's talk a little bit about why that might be the case, that they are just so slow to deal with this problem. Now, in America, it makes sense because of the 13th Amendment that basically turns prison labor into cheap American slave labor. Let's be real here. But that's not really the case in Canada. So what benefit does Canada have to keep people in jail for marijuana-related offenses? There really isn't any reason, unfortunately. Our prison system is notoriously racist. Like, the vast majority of our prison population tend to be black, or especially indigenous people. If memory serves me correctly, indigenous people make up only about 4 or 5% of the nation's population, but they make up at least 25% of the prison population. And people struggle with mental health. Our prisons are falling apart. They don't even really have any proper supports for, actually rehabilitating prisoners, which is ostensibly supposed to be the goal of prison, of, okay, you did a bad thing, so here's your time to, get clean, get your life together, stuff like that, and come out the other end a changed person and you learned your lesson. We don't do that, really. Most places don't do that. And so that's kind of the problem here, where jails are basically being used to house people who are struggling with mental health, with addiction, and of course, just poverty in general, right? So there is no real reason for this to be happening. And yet it continues in good old sunny progressive Canada. So while people are lighting up a spliff today, I would like them to also remember that there are plenty of people who can enjoy that same privilege, even though they should be allowed to. But the government and our society doesn't care enough to actually put pressure on this issue and reform a core part of our infrastructure, if you want to call it that is actively making the situation worse and being used as a stopgap for all the worst possible aspects and failings of our society. And the fact that this isn't part of the conversation, while we love to continue to go around about, oh, look, we legalized weed, haha, that is so infuriating. And it is definitely what's bothering me today.